Let me introduce to the show one of my favourite guests to start this afternoon's proceedings. He's a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisley. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Kev. It's great to see you.
Always a pleasure, Philip. Now, before we start, this is how the Defence Secretary responded to news that a Russian spy ship was sailing off the UK coast. Have a listen.
I speak, a Russian spy ship, the Yantar, is on the edge of UK waters north of Scotland, having entered the UK's wider waters over the last few weeks. This is a vessel designed for gathering intelligence and mapping our undersea cables. We deployed a Royal Navy frigate and RAF P-8 planes to monitor and track this vessel's every move, during which the Yantar directed lasers at our pilots. That Russian action is deeply dangerous, and this is the second time this year that this ship, the Yantar, has deployed to UK waters. So my message to Russia and to Putin is this: we see you, we know what you're doing, and if the Yantar travels south this week, we are ready.
Well, Philip, you know, the question is, there's a tough words from John Healey there, and we've got a serious threat going on. It's quite clear, at the very least, Putin is deliberately goading us. He's trolling us. He's testing the waters, almost literally, with this spy ship. But when Defence Secretary John Healey says, we know what you're doing and we are ready, are we ready, do you think? I'm not sure we are. That's the problem, isn't it?
It is the problem, and of course we're not ready. We're nowhere near ready. The first duty of any government is to defend its citizens, and this government has been so negligent, it's terrifying, actually. We don't meet NATO's Article 3 defence obligations. That's the basic defence obligations that we should meet to protect ourselves, that this government should protect our country. We're nowhere near there. This has been described by the Commons Defence Committee as a wake-up call and last chance saloon. So that's how bad we are. But I don't think it's just that, Kev. I think it's more than an external existential threat, because if something happens, we've got so many fifth columnists, Palestine Action, etc., people marching every week who hate Britain, hate the West, hate Jews, hate everybody within this country. If there was an external threat did happen, if someone did invade, then we'd have the extra problem of fifth columnists inside helping them. And now that's new, Kev. We've never had that in the history of this country before, because up until the end of the 20th century, we'd never had mass immigration before. So something is happening, and no, we really don't know, the people of this country really don't know how vulnerable they are. Now, that might sound extremely dramatic, and it is dramatic, but it's actually the truth.
And I think we've got something like 70,000 troops available, which wouldn't even fill Wembley Stadium. Now, because of the New World Order, the fact that perhaps America will be less willing to step in and help the Europeans defend themselves, there's been all this talk of raising expenditure on defence, not just by Britain, but by other European countries. So in 2024, by the way, the NATO, the recommended amount we spent is at least 5% of GDP, gross domestic product. Donald Trump, in particular, is very keen that we start to get close to that we start to spend that in order to defend ourselves, instead of what we've traditionally been doing for the last few decades, which is going, oh, hello, America, can you look after us, please? Can you deal with Russia? Can you deal with all the big threats? Because we don't really want to spend any money on all those weapons and nasty things like that. Well, that's not good enough. Trump quite rightly said, you start paying your way, you start defending yourself. So in 2024, we spent a pathetic 2.3% of our GDP on defence. Now, the minimum guideline is set by NATO is 2%. Donald Trump thinks we should spend 5%. I think he's probably right. So in view of this changing new world order, Starmer and his gang have committed to, and listen to this, it's very, very dramatic, all of this, 2.3% last year. They've committed to increasing this to 2.5% by 2027, with further plans to increase spending to 3.5% by 2035. In other words, this is nowhere near enough, is it?
Well, it's just insane. I mean, first of all, the members of this government have. I'm thinking about David Lammy in particular here, but I'm thinking about Angela Rayner, who's gone, but who'll probably come back. What were they calling? They were alienating the US. They were alienating particularly President Trump by calling him names. He's literally Hitler and all of that kind of stuff. At the same time, they refused to spend the minimum, the bare minimum to protect us. This is how negligent these people are. And so you've got that direct impact of literally just not meeting the quota and not spending what they should be doing. But we've also got the indirect impact, which is more cultural, isn't it? And I was thinking, as I was reading this story, I was thinking about the story from 2023 about the RAF and the diversity quotas, saying, well, the RAF is too white and too male. We need to get rid of those people.
Come on.
Diversity. Now, that is really important, isn't it? Because if you're going to have an operation on your brain surgery, you don't want a diversity quota brain surgeon, and this is exactly the same. This is just as important. So for these people, the loony left, the Labour Party, all the other Green Party and all of that, the armed forces represent poisonous masculinity. They represent patriotism. They represent nationalism, all the things that they hate. So of course they won't spend money on it, right? Yeah. Of course they won't. And that, again, it's not just the fact that they won't do that. It's everything. It's the philosophy behind it. It's how they think, and it's how they view the armed forces. They view the armed forces with contempt, and for me, that's the most worrying thing.
Absolutely. To put some figures on the spending that we've been doing and what we intend to do this year, last year, coming up to this year, £60.2 billion on defence. 2028 to 29 is predicted. They hope to reach 73.5 billion, and that would go up by 2035 to considerably more than that. But the point is, these are still way below what we should be spending. Yeah. And you have to say about this Labour government, when they say, oh, it's very difficult. Well, perhaps, just as a thought, if they stop spending quite so much on public sector pay rises, if they stop spending quite so much on the increasingly unjustifiable foreign aid budget that they love so much, then they could put some of the billions that they will save on all that nonsense into defence, protecting the people of this country, which, as you quite rightly said at the beginning of our conversation, Philip, is the first sacred duty of a government. They are not fulfilling that duty. It is quite palpably clear.
Yeah, and let's just put it in context, okay? This is how ridiculous it is. You said before that we've got an army of 70,000 people, which wouldn't even fill Wembley Stadium, okay? That is the smallest army this country has ever had since the Napoleonic Wars, okay? So it's, again, it's this idea of putting people in danger. It's not caring. It's not even meeting that first duty. So this government, my God, it needs to go. And again, as I said before, this is, people don't realise, and it's understandable that they don't, because people are going about their everyday lives, they're trying to earn a living, they're looking after children, they're paying mortgages and stuff like that. They don't necessarily think about national defence. But we are in terrible trouble here, so much so that the Russians think they can just go and play with us on the waters outside of Scotland.
Yeah, and, this is clearly Putin playing around, taunting us, goading us. But in these circumstances, things can go wrong. A slight kind of mishap, and, God knows what could happen. So, I mean, I'm not wishing this to happen, but horror of horrors. Suppose something did happen with this ongoing incident up in Scotland, a missile was accidentally fired or something, and suddenly we're at war with Russia. John Healey We know what you're doing. We are ready. We are not ready. We are not in any way ready for war. And you know what they say? These Labour people, they love peace. You know what they always say? To maintain peace, you must be ready for war. We are clinging on to peace, but we are in no way ready for war. And that's a disgrace. That's a disgrace. They've got to stop paying civil servants and doctors massive pay rises and train drivers and God knows what, and start buying weapons, start recruiting, start making our armed forces bigger than they are now, because this is serious. There's a new world order. It's not like it used to be, and this country, this government, is simply not prepared.
No, it isn't. And the word I think that really sums it all up is deterrent. There is no deterrent, right? And we're beginning to understand now what the rest of the 21st century is going to be like, and it's going to be chaos. It's an absolute international jungle with players like China and Russia taking precedence. And we will not have that protection from the US, but we will not protect ourselves. That's the problem. Well, while we're talking about this, and I'm looking at some of this footage, I'm actually thinking about the Cold War, and I for the first time feel as uncomfortable as I did actually when I was a little boy, and we were always talking about 4-minute warnings and nuclear bombs. Now there's something else happening, and at least in those days you felt as though we might be at least semi-prepared with some kind of deterrent, but now it feels we're wide open on the outside for people coming in, hostile forces coming in, but wide open on the inside for fifth columnists who want to destroy us anyway. And we're not doing anything about the one, and we're not doing anything about the other. Again, I come back to this word that is terrifying, and it is terrifying. I don't want to be, so negative about everything. It feels as though I am always these days. But the news just brings it out of me. You know what I mean? It is terrifying. It's as simple as that.
You made a good point, Philip. The essential problem we've got here is the kind of basic Labour philosophy. They don't like war. They don't like the idea of military strength. They don't like nuclear weapons. They reluctantly cling on to our nuclear strike force, but they don't really like it. We know that. They just don't like putting money into the military. The Navy, the Army, the Air Force. They just don't like it. No. They've been forced into saying the right things by Donald Trump and by developing situations around the world, particularly in Ukraine, of course. They've been forced into starting to try to talk a good game, but they're not doing it, and it's not in their DNA. We have a problem here. Listen, folks, let me know what you think. Do you trust this Labour government to defend this nation properly? 03444991000. Philip Kisley, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on. Dr. Philip Kisley there, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum.